So my friend told me, hey, you're trying to make videos about movies and stuff. You should make a video about the new Cruella movie. And I thought, oh, I had never intended to watch that movie, but okay, I'll give it a try. But I thought first I'd take this opportunity to talk about villain movies as a whole, or as a genre. With this video, I wanted to talk about villain stories and what draws people to watch them. Granted, I can't speak for the wide majority of the people that live on this earth, but I can provide my input on what makes a legitimate reason to create a villain movie. Other commentators I've seen talk about remake, saying something along the lines of, they have to justify their existence. In a similar vein, I think this is true for villain stories. And to be clear, I'm referring to stories about villains that have already been established in the canon of a hero story. Making up an original lead character who just so happens to be a villain needs to follow the same rules and principles you would follow for making a hero main character, which is good characterization. And that's the pitfall here, right? If you're using an already established character to make a story about, then the character has to fulfill a couple categories. The character needs to already have character traits that viewers can latch onto. If they don't have any, then you have a lot of work cut out for yourself, because you're going to have to write traits for them from scratch. The problem with this is, no one wants to see a movie about a character they never bothered to care about in the first place. This means you're going to need a good marketing team to sell your movie by honing in on character traits that you've written for them. You need to tell a compelling character story. Plot is fine, but you can have the best plot in the world and it always falls flat without good characters. On the other hand, good characters can carry even a bad plot. So I would say you need to sell us on the character, their motivations, their likability or unlikability, so long as you do it right. We as an audience need to feel like we can go on this journey with your character. I'm going to tangent a little bit, but I promise it proves a point. I love Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. It's wacky and unexpected, and I love it. But I would have never seen it if it wasn't for my friend introducing me to it. I didn't know the movie even existed until that point in time, and if I'm going to be honest, I didn't really like Scott as a character. I genuinely thought he was a bad person, but the movie made how unlikable he was the moving plot point. Scott is a broken person, but it's easily overlooked by the negative way he treats other people. The good news is, the movie calls him out on it. Every character questions his decision-making, the tension lies in his bad choices, and Kim especially calls out his bad behavior at the very start.
I mean, are you really happy or are you really evil?
Like, do I have ulterior motives or something? I'm offended, Kim.
Wounded even?
Hurt, Kim.
The movie doesn't justify his behavior. It does make jokes surrounding his bad behavior, and I actually enjoy these jokes now on repeat viewings because knowing who Scott becomes by the end of the movie allows me to see him through a different lens. I can laugh at the absurdity of the movie and at Scott's decisions because I know his journey. In my eyes, Scott is, technically, a villain who happens to be a main character in his own story. The best part is, he's just an ordinary guy. Sure, he lives in a world that establishes he's capable of superhuman feats, but what I'm saying is he acts like a regular person. His villainy is just in how he treats the people around him. He's toxic. And by the end of the movie, he realizes this and owns up to it. He isn't doing it just for forgiveness either. He does it to make the people he's affected feel good about themselves. He even takes ownership of Knives' pain. And this is because he realized that he was allowing his victimhood, or the way someone had hurt him in the past, to excuse making people victims of his behavior. So now we need to talk about villain movies. What justifies a villain movie? What boxes do we need to tick to say this is a movie worth making that isn't going to make the audience scoff at you? Well, in order to justify a villain movie, you need to have a good villain. And since we're talking about villains that already exist within the canon of a hero story, we need to qualify how that villain operates in said story and what we would want to see if they were to have their own film. In my mind, a good villain has a worldview that directly challenges the heroes. Their take on reality has to be fairly logical. We just don't necessarily agree with the actions they take based on their conclusions. Joker is a really good example of a villain who has a particular view on society that isn't necessarily wrong, and it's this worldview that he feeds to Batman on several occasions to get him to see through his eyes. This is where the true tension lies. Sure, Joker is doing all sorts of horrific things, but the true battle is a psychological one. He's trying to get Batman to crack, or to doubt himself. And I think, most importantly of all, he's testing the limits of Batman's no-killing policy. And I think if your goal is to see if somebody will kill you, you need to continually prove you're someone worth killing. Which means the horrific actions you perform need to escalate with each new encounter. Well, that's how we saw the villain in a hero movie. We can't do much with that in a villain story unless we wanted to see some insight into how our villain comes to terms with how drastic their actions are becoming. Perhaps there's some doubt or hesitation. Maybe they're just as nervous about pressing that big red button as we are. And the tension of the movie is watching them sweat as they realize their moral line is also being tested. How far are they willing to go to push our hero? But even then, this is still limited in what you can do. So a better idea would be an origin story. The origin's purpose would need to accomplish two things. It needs to tell us how our villain obtained their worldview, and it needs to show us how they got started in their career. It's also important that their story is treated like a case study. It needs to communicate understanding, but not sympathy. So when critics asked the lead actor of the new Joker film if the movie wasn't going to unintentionally glorify the Joker's actions and the violence that ensues, I think it was a fair question to ask. And I don't think the actor needed to make such a scene about walking out. That was a valuable opportunity absolutely wasted. It would have made for a very good discussion. Our next talking point is the villain who comes into their own. I'm sorry I keep leaning in on the Batman franchise, but I think Harley Quinn is a really good example of this category. See, Harley is a character who we've already seen the case study for. She's a woman who was a therapist who inexplicably fell in love with the Joker and followed him with devotion, probably because his worldview was very convincing. The problem was their relationship was filled with red flags and he treated her like dirt. Harley Quinn is indeed a villain, but she's also a victim of a villain. I think what makes a Harley Quinn movie so appealing is that it is a story of empowerment. She's taken off the yoke of being the Joker's punching bag, and she's coming into her own power. That said, she is still a villain. As an audience, we don't really want to see someone use their newfound power on vulnerable people who can't fight back. Not only is that just uncomfortable to watch, it's not interesting. It's not empowerment at that point, it's just bullying, which is sickening to watch. Side note, this is why I have such mixed feelings behind funny games. It's sickening to watch because our two victims are exercising power over hapless victims, but it's also a case study of destructive nihilism. At any rate, it's important that a movie that fits into this category shows us a villain that goes after someone who holds as much or more power than they do, or someone who used to hold power over them. This more or less softens the blow of the character's villainy and allows us to more or less enjoy the ride as they come to blows with their previous aggressor, or take to new heights as they overthrow the biggest bad. It's also far more interesting to see tension within the villain's circle. It's basically a story of revenge where we can throw morals out the window. The third category is the misunderstood category. This is the Elphaba narrative. It takes a villain we're already familiar with and shows that they aren't actually a villain, they're just perceived as such. Elphaba stood against a system that naturally rejected her because she was different, and in her numerous attempts to save people she cared about, she ended up making things worse. And because she's different, she was labeled the bad guy, while her friend Glinda, who fell in line, became a vision of goodness. They play their roles, and the relationship that they have over their respective stories becomes complicated. There's actually a better example of this type of villain story because it's really a subversion of our expectations. But I would prefer it if it was its own video, so please stick around for that. This leads to my problem with the Cruella movie. Without having ever seen it, there's nothing about Cruella as a villain that I find captivating. What do we know about Cruella from the pre-established canon? She's a fashion designer who's all business. She thought a Dalmatian pattern coat would look lovely and just wanted it. Cruella knows what she wants and demands to have it. That's fairly villainous, and to make her more villainous, she asks to buy the puppies. There's far too many for you to reasonably take care of. I'll pay you for them. But of course, this is all a formality, because when the family refuses, she just hires a couple of slapstick cohorts to kidnap them behind their back. The problem is there isn't anything about her that has already been established that we can work with. That, and we know what she becomes. She wants to kill puppies. There's little that can be done to sympathize with her. Because at the end of the day, the movie has chosen for this to be the precursor to how she came to be. No amount of "I got bullied in high school" is going to make me feel bad for someone who creates victims from their victimhood. As far as my standings go, she has no worldview that challenges the family's ideals. She just wants to kill puppies for fashion. She isn't overcoming victimhood. She's using her power over the powerless. Her actions are very direct. She leaves no room for misunderstandings. She's also very visibly upset when the owners won't sell her puppies that she wants to kill and turn into a coat. With subversion, there's very little we can do here either. In the cartoon, we can suspend our disbelief that a family can genuinely take care of 100 and more dogs. With live action, the medium they are choosing to tell this story, we're grounding ourselves in reality. Not only do I think it would be incredibly lazy to do a plot where, actually, she was just trying to save animals from an abusive household, I just don't think it's very interesting. And this is where I would say that marketing has also failed this movie, except, I guess that's not really true anymore. The ads that I find for the movie now are very different from the ones I remember. Either that or I got mandalaed? Anyway, we don't have this "I was bullied" sob story. Instead, we have something that looks like it qualifies for our second category. Here we see the Duchess. She's this high and mighty fashion designer, and it appears that Cruella is more or less her intern. Story beats that I could reasonably believe are the following: a fall from grace to sent into madness case study, something of a cautionary tale, because who wants to become that? Where Cruella looks up to this woman and wants to be noticed by her, and is taken under this woman's wing, and she does everything she can to be just like her. It can be sad in a way to see someone with promise turn into a bad egg. If framed right, it can definitely still be a tragic tale, but not one where you necessarily have to feel sorry for her enough to excuse her future actions. The second storyline that I can definitely see as viable is the revenge story, which was the second bullet point in my What Makes a Good Villain Story segment. It seems that our Duchess character has gone too far in her abuse of her interns, and Cruella has decided to not only show her up, she's going to do whatever it takes to make this woman's life miserable. I do see a scene where she's kidnapped this woman's dogs, but this isn't about the dogs. They're just collateral. Her actions are specifically targeting the woman who once held power over her. So I think this is an interesting interpretation of the Dalmatian thing, and it's relieving to see. So I think I will give this movie a shot. I made absolutely certain that I wrote the script before seeing the movie so that I could lay out these expectations and my honest hesitations towards the film. I will give it an honest viewing, and I will tell you if it exceeds my expectations or if it was a horrible mistake that I will never make again. So, I will see you in part 2 of my What Makes a Good Villain Movie video essay after I watch it. I'm afraid this one has gone on far long enough, and I don't want to lose you halfway through an hour-long video. I shall see you next time, so until then, stay tuned.